It's been a while, but finally, I've returned with some Workers and Resources Soviet Republic. The city builder is so detailed that system requirements should mention an Adderall prescription for the player. Now, since I played this game last time, there has been some updates, adding different world maps along with earlier start dates. So, I've decided to dive back into the game by trying out the North Korean map with the 1950 start year. I'm going to be playing with most mechanics enabled, but I'm not touching realism mode, since I haven't touched this game in a while, combined with the fact that I want to do other things besides playing this game this week. So we can build anywhere within North Korea, and we have custom offices with China, the Soviet Union, and South Korea if I'm feeling treacherous. Since we're building from an empty map, I'm looking at the northwest of the country since there is a lot of flat land that is very close to the Chinese customs station. I'm playing with research enabled for this game, so I have no idea where the resources are on this map. When we got our independence from the Japanese, they took all the maps telling us where the coal and iron is, so we're starting from scratch here. With no minerals or metals to mine, we're going to be reliant on good old-fashioned agriculture. Once that is done, I'm going to make a city that will be linked together by trams to get people around. Setting up the basics of the city was already so expensive, and it was made worse by my brave idea to make my public transportation based on trams, considering as soon as I set up the tram lines, I was staring at my screen wondering how I even turned them on. So I may have burned another 50,000 rubles or so before I figured out how to electrify the rails, but that's a small price to pay to get the trams running, because Soviet engineering allows our trams to move in ways thought impossible in the West. With innovation like this, we'll be living in the 22nd century by the 70s. Alright, maybe that's a bit of an overestimation considering how we get gravel for our construction. We don't have conveyor belts for the mine, so I have to use small trucks to ferry the gravel stone to the processing plant, and they just aren't keeping up. I want to set up my own local construction industry since contracting out buildings has quite the price tag with it, and I haven't even gotten to the part where I set up the actual industry of this city. So to save money, I made it so the town hospital would be built by my construction office. Turns out this was not the building I should have tried to save money on, with a good amount of people in the city getting upset that the only medical care in the city was scavenging for herbs in the grass. Of course, no city of equality would be complete without a space for those more equal than others. I needed a space for the educated people who would run the local government. With the residential and infrastructural needs met, now I needed to give the people something to do to make me money, since despite being a socialist utopia, the game doesn't allow me to make an economy of baristas and bookstore owners. With our resources and tech, the most profitable industry we can make is textiles. So I need to get these sweatshops up and running with fabric and clothing factories. We will have to import all the crops since our farms obviously haven't grown anything yet. With that, we'll have the bare minimum to make a town for everyone to live long, happy lives. Sometimes the workers confuse me in this game. I notice a small amount of unemployment and realize that the people living in the nice houses can't get to work because their driveway wasn't finished. We're supposed to be building a utopia here, and these lazy citizens will come up with any excuse not to show up to their job.
Open sesame! Well, I've done all I can do.
I'm also seeing why trams are very garbage to rely on as your main source of transportation. You can't turn on line spacing, and they still get stuck in traffic. So even if I try to time the tram launches, there is no tram schedule. In Korea, the trains arrive when they get there, alright? And you better be happy about it. Despite our starting problems, in May, we finally start getting some income from our exports. As for profit, well, don't rush me, okay? I need more workers if I'm gonna make more money. But this fire in my fabric factory is not helping. This made me realize, though, that I once again forgot to make a fire department. One of these days I'll learn. So, I hurry up and get one built, but all my citizens just walk past it with nobody taking up the mantle. That factory is kind of the heart of this town's economy, and nobody wants to save it because there wasn't a driveway for the fire department. Little did I know, 10 feet of driveway would be my atlas holding up this world. The setback isn't going to stop my expansion though. We will rebuild and expand further. I wanted to save some rubles by using dollars to invite some third world immigrants, and after they get here, you really wonder where they find these people. Like, how are you guys too uneducated to make fabric or stitch clothes? 10-year-old British girls were doing this just fine 100 years ago. What's your excuse? Once again, when fall comes, the people, despite needing heat, refuse to work in the heating plant, and we're not staffing vital infrastructure. I respect the prisoner who's here by himself when all his prison mates and guards left though. That man is the face of integrity. Letting people decide their jobs with vibes ain't working anymore, so the state has to step in and say, you're working in the heating plant. At least when winter was approaching and the snow was hitting the ground, our city was running well. However, appearances were a bit deceiving, with the citizens not exactly living their healthiest lives. So, like a good government worker, I took this concerning information and ignored it so we can do more stuff that makes us look good. To make the people understand that they're in capable hands, instead of focusing on bettering their lifestyles, I'm gonna make Lenin statues around the city to aura farm. The people will see those statues and think clearly if the city has money to build these, they're doing very well. Once the snow starts to melt in March, you may have noticed that we have a lot of extra vacancies in the city compared to before the winter, but I'm not gonna let that slow me down. The boys in the lab have researched better logistics for us, which, let's be clear, is just a building with a better parking lot to park trucks in. Something we already have, by the way. I'm just trying to imagine what they're even doing. Well, what if we use trucks in this parking lot to move things around? With our expanded logistics, our city is approaching a sustainable position. Our exports are scaling to a point where I can even see some green in our budget every once in a while. Also, since I need citizens alive to make money, I start moving them around in the city away from the pollutant producing buildings. Some people are saying that being in walking distance of a bunch of factories isn't good for your health, and I fear that they're right about that. It does actually help with our people's lifespan, shooting up to a long 57 years. But that was short-lived. When fall hit, our life expectancy sank harder than Game of Thrones recommendations after the ending. The worst part about these hundreds of deaths? The effect on my economy. Exports were plummeting now. Pollution was a serious problem, and I needed to address it. I needed as many educated men as possible to work on pollution technology, which takes a while because of how the tech tree works. First, they gotta realize that, yeah, pollution, that's a thing, and it takes weeks to figure this out when they could just go outside. Then, they gotta figure out that they can actually do something to reduce pollution before actually reducing pollution from factories. 1951 wasn't really a great year for us, but hopefully in 1952 we can turn things around. On the bright side, with less people around, there is less pollution for the surviving citizens to deal with, so people get healthier. I need this city to grow, so I invited more immigrants to replace the ones who died last year. Once these new guys get to work, they immediately start a fire in the clothing factory. Not sure if this is from incompetence or eco-terrorism, you decide. During the summer, things are actually alright. We make a healthy profit from our exports. We even had more births than deaths in 1 month. Feeling emboldened by this great season, I decided to invite even more people to stay. However, when fall comes, it's clear that I'm about to go through the same issues that I did last winter. If I'm to have a future here, I'm gonna need to make some drastic measures. First thing I do is go to the bank and get a loan. I'm gonna move all my industry farther away from the residential area. I can take care of two problems here: moving the pollution farther away from people's homes while also having my warehouse feed into the factories better. Unfortunately, in North Korea, we don't know what a forklift is, so I have to have my warehouse very close to the factories. But once it's all done, it's a good design for a supply chain, I just put the crops in the warehouse and it feeds into the food, alcohol, and fabric factory that feeds into the clothes factories. I also moved my heating plant farther away too. So, what did my over 250,000 rubles of construction accomplish for the citizens' health? Nothing, basically. When the snow fell, so did the bodies again, and I was so confused. I thought I was making the right moves here, but here I am with my population graph looking like a roller coaster. Once spring hit, we once again shed a third of our population. I had no idea what I was doing wrong here, so I did the only logical move I could think of, doing the same thing I did last year. Build a farther neighborhood, more loans, invite more people. These people weren't even lasting a month though. Even into the summer, the population was declining. No way! I spent 16 hours building this city just to go out like this. When I saw my fire department not even be able to save my fabric factory, I was at my limit. I went to bed ready to accept my failure. However, when I woke up, a part of me refused to give up. I needed to save this city. I got the pollution monitoring station, and when I looked at its report, I saw the problem was right under my nose the whole time. I've been so busy looking at my industry, I completely ignored where we put our garbage. I had foolishly put our dumps way too close to where everyone lives. And while I'm no doctor, I can safely assume that living within walking distance of a bunch of industrial waste and other garbage wasn't so good for the lungs. I had to spend a lot of money on a cleanup effort to move the garbage from near the city to a much farther place out of harm's way. Moving over 1,500 tons of garbage takes a long time, and every day more people are dying from the pollution it's giving off. We were in population freefall, and by October we had descended below 1,500 people. I tried to install a crane to speed it up, but like many things in this game, it doesn't work how you think it should, and that slowed me down a lot. It took me a while to figure it out because the game will look at you and say, yeah, these dumps are connected, so that means dumping trash into one dump will spread it out over to its connected dumps, and taking out trash will pull it from its connected dumps? Yeah, that's how it works. So I should be able to pull from these full dumps from this empty crane dump. Nope, there's no trash there. It's so jank to make this work right. I had to move the trash from one dump to the crane dump for my garbage trucks to finally understand that they can use the crane. As the cleanup progressed, I brought in more citizens to bring the city back to life, but it was soon clear I was too early on that. Sub 45 life expectancy. I brought us back to medieval times, oh my god. In April 1954, the cleanup was finished and I could safely demolish the dumps. It's amazing how much the city cleans up once you take care of your garbage properly. The life expectancy starts shooting up in the city to where we're actually normal compared to the rest of the world. The pollution in the city is far away from where the people live, so everyone is living an enjoyable life. I played this game to build a North Korean city and came away with a powerful environmental message. Pick up your trash or you may just end up killing most of your city. Now we have a healthy population growth for our small town and are in the green financially. Or so it would seem. Yeah, it took me a lot of debt to get to this point. Turns out having to constantly replace your population is pretty expensive, so I'm in a deep hole and the only way to get out is to keep digging through that debt. Now, is it feasible for me to max out my loans and do a year of massive industrial and population expansion to bring myself back to the black? Probably, but after over 20 hours of playing just to get to this point,
I'm tired, boss.
I hope you guys enjoyed my return to Workers and Resources. Now that I'm refamiliarized with the game, I definitely wanted to give it another try soon, and if you're interested in that, remember to leave a like so I know how much y'all want it. Since there is a 1930 start date, next time I want to roleplay doing Stalin's 4-year plan where I build a city in the middle of Siberia. So if you guys really want that, 10,000 likes and I'll have that video by the end of the month. Thank you to my alumni supporting my content on Patreon, any support y'all can give there helps me prioritize making high quality videos for y'all. There will be more good content to come, so I hope to see y'all again soon. Bye bye!